Hi, you're listening to a student-focused episode of the Sociology Show podcast. If you're studying the subject at GCSE, A-level, foundation, degree, or any other discipline, then this podcast could be of help to you. If you have a question for the show, then you can email the Sociology Show podcast at gmail.com, and one of the teachers, lecturers, examiners, or experts will answer your question for you. You can sponsor the show on the GoFundMe page and subscribe on all the usual podcast platforms. If you're going to class, going to the gym, or just chilling, put your headphones in and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello and welcome to the Sociology Show. The Sociology Show podcast is brought to you in association with Tutor2U, the exam performance specialist for A-level and GCSE sociology students and teachers. And so you can visit their website, which is tutor2u.net/sociology. And once you're on the website, you can pick up revision guides, revision videos, flashcards, and everything else that you need for your A-level or GCSE sociology studies. And so on to this episode, and I'm delighted to welcome back for the third time, Drew Dalton from University of Sunderland. Hi, Drew.
Hello again. It's great to be here.
Becoming a regular. You're a regular now.
I really am. I feel like I'm part of the furnishings. It's quite nice.
It's great. It's great to have you back. So the reason I want to talk to you, Drew, is we've got a lot of A-level students at the moment who are probably contemplating, thinking about sociology, wanting to do it at degree level, and you're a good person to speak to. So do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of the degree courses that you offer at your uni?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the University of Sunderland, we've just had a huge kind of refurb of our sociology degree, and it's looking really exciting. And now what we had in the past, we previously had, the BSc Honours Sociology, and we've still got that, but now we've got different routes that you can come out at because you've specialised throughout your degree. So we have if you want to be a generalist and have, and pick and choose your modules as you study as options all the way through, you can come out with a BSc Honours Sociology, but you can also come out with a sociology with gender and inequality as well, or a sociology with research and social policy for the policy boards, and the research and practice route, which is for those people who are really interested in making a difference within communities. So we've got three quite distinctive routes there, as well as the kind of more standardized sociology, which is really exciting because it can lead you to kind of different career routes, can't it? So I think at the moment there's this whole stuff around about people waking up to the nature of inequality. So for me, that would, if that's your bag and you're really interested in studying inequality and intersectionality and all that kind of stuff that's happening right now on our TV screens, then the gender and inequality route might really be for you. And if you want to have that kind of specialist knowledge and all that really fascinating stuff about, poverty and racism and homophobia and social injustice, that would be kind of for you. But we've also got the kind of research and social policy because, there's all this stuff, isn't there, about austerity and neoliberalism and the welfare state being withdrawn, and what does that mean for people who are left behind? And those who are really interested in kind of social policy and want to take that further into a career. So we've developed our research and social policy route as well. And the third route, which is the new one, is our research and practice. So we get a lot of people who come into our degree and they actively want to make a difference within the diverse communities that they go into work in. They want to empower individuals. They like that really kind of empowering approach to things. And so our research and practice route would really suit those types of people that want to go into that very practical stuff about dealing, giving people a voice. Whether that's service users or people living in communities, or on a much larger level in terms of campaigning. If you feel that was too specialist, any of those routes, then we also have the BSc Sociology as well. So you might say, well, actually, I want to pick and mix all of those things and make that my degree. So we developed those four routes because this wasn't just our idea. This came from our students. And our students, these are the routes they tend to go into in terms of careers. They want to work either in communities, they want to work in policy, or they want to work within tackling inequalities. And largely, they tend to be the careers that people go into But I'll talk a little bit more about some of the careers people go into later, if that's okay.
Yeah. So are all four of those routes, are they all BSc? Is that right?
They are, yes. So throughout all four routes, you also get the added string, which I think sometimes people forget about a sociology degree, is that you also come out a trained and qualified social researcher. And so we have BSc all the way through. So you'll learn the research methods that sociologists use to study society. And that doesn't mean just about, interviews versus surveys. It also means that, you'll look at other methodologies which are really exciting, using kind of visual methods. And we encourage people to use research in their dissertations to pick their specialist topic and go, right, okay, go out into the social world and research that and come back with what you find. And so we've got kind of that research design all the way through. And it just means that you're going to come out with something additional on top of your degree to say, well, do you know what? I'm also a qualified researcher here.
Yeah.
Because we get a lot of people who go on to work in research afterwards. Because, they see issues around them and they say, well, actually, why is that happening? Or that's unfair. And how can we get to the root of that? And, people listen to research. I think we can scream down social media as much as we want, can't we?
Yeah.
But policymakers want to see research. The United Nations want to see research. The government does. So by having that skill, I think a sociology degree marks you out compared to other, perhaps, degree disciplines where you don't get that level of analysis, which is really exciting.
And before we start to explore some of those different routes a little bit further, as an A-level teacher, one of the most common questions I get is, what do I need to get into university? So imagine we have a student who's contemplating doing sociology or even coming to University of Sunderland. What sort of qualifications do they need before they come to you?
Right. So first of all, I always start off with consider your personal statement first.
Yes.
Because the personal statement becomes so important and becomes a great way in which to really kind of prove yourself. So if you've done kind of extra things or you've volunteered or, done all that kind of great stuff that marks out usually a good sociology student, then I would say definitely put those down first. If you haven't had a chance to do that because it is COVID, and that restricts people's routes, we understand that. But, just in that case, then talk about your interests and talk about your skills that you have. And that's what we like to see. Basically, our typical offer is usually 104 UCAS points. So that's usually a minimum of kind of 2 A levels or equivalent usually. And that's what you would need going forward. We also do require a grade 4 or above, a GCSE as well, in your English and maths to get you in. But, I think with anything, if you've got a good personal statement, that can sometimes tip you over the balance as well, can't it?
Yeah.
So if you've just got slightly below and you're like, that was my first choice, personal statements can really make a difference there.
And would the students have to have done sociology before to come to you or not necessarily?
No, we've purposely structured the course so you get all of that introductory stuff. So you would pretty much do that in your first year. We would give you the introductory knowledge that you need. And if you have studied sociology at A level, you'll find that a degree is often quite different because I've taught A level sociology myself. So very often a degree takes you into further depth, as it were, and we move away from maybe some of the classic studies that often get taught at an A level design, as it were. And so this would deepen your knowledge. So even if you have done it, you're not going to be repeating the same things in the same way. So we take a kind of really structured approach to kind of hold your hand as you go through, which is nice.
Great. Although if those that are doing A-level sociology, if they're enjoying it, then there's a good connection to the degree level, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the connection's all the way there from the beginning. And it will only make you a better sociologist. It really will.
So let's start with the classic then. If someone's just thinking generally and they're not quite sure what to specialise in, if they wanted to do the standard BSc Sociology, what can they expect if they take that route?
Okay, so if you're taking the kind of the standard BSc, everybody in the first year, what we call level 4, So at level 4 in your first year of your degree, everybody in our sociology programs, no matter what route you're going down, all study the same modules in the first year. And the reason we do that is because we want a kind of foundation, so we know everyone's on the same page. And then after that, you can kind of start to go through and take options and so on and so on. And so at the end of your first year, you can then say, okay, I may have applied and just picked BSc Sociology, or I've applied and I want to do gender and inequality. You get a chance to change your route at the end of your first year. So I think that's just quite an important one to know. So, sometimes it takes you time to settle in, doesn't it, before you're going through. So your first year, you would cover the kind of core things. So that would be kind of introduction to the social theories that we think you need to understand, to really understand, what the why things happen in the society that we live in. And then you would go on to kind of look at what we call our spaces for reflexive practice, which basically means it's a study of communities. What's happening in different communities, global and local. So you may want to study your own community. And through doing this, we're starting to get you thinking like a researcher. What are the core social problems that community faces? How can I go and investigate that community? So by having those skills, that kind of builds on to the next year. And then if you were studying the BSc Sociology or any of the other routes, you would then study social inequalities in your first year and ask the deep questions of why do these inequalities exist? And what are the mechanisms and reasons behind them? And then you would study social policy. Okay, so now we know about these inequalities. What have people tried to do about it and how effective has it been? And that would kind of lay out the first year. So you'd study kind of 4 modules in your first year. And then you can go on to your next year, and then you can start to pick options. And that will then begin your specialism. Or if you want to stay general, that will go on and stay general for you. So you can, like I said, do the pick and mix approach of which routes or options you want to take.
And the one that really interests me is taking the more gender inequality route, because gender is probably one of the biggest, most talked and changed areas of sociology in the last 5 to 10 years, isn't it?
Oh, massively. And we have a master's degree afterwards. So a lot of our students like to stay on and study that even further and go in more depth. And so, I think it's a key emergent thing. I mean, we're seeing things like the Black Lives Matter movement. We're seeing the resistance to some social movements happening in Trump's America, or what remains of it now, happening at the moment. We're seeing this everywhere, aren't we, in terms of inequalities? The stuff around poverty and free school meals in the UK.
Yeah.
These are all kind of pressing issues that are happening right now. And I think the gender and inequality route will really help people to consider what that looks like. So, for example, in the second year, we've got modules that those students would take, because we would kind of push you towards certain modules to get that recognition at the end of your degree. So we will have options there on gender diversity and human rights, looking at global perspectives, tackling some of the big issues after you've done your social inequalities in first year. Getting you to think about, female genital mutilation and human trafficking, and, taking the gendered lens to what's going on in the world that we see right now. Why is it that men end up fighting in wars as participants? And that in itself is gendered, isn't it? Or the nature of child soldiers. We often forget about all these kind of very gritty issues that actually have a gendered lens to them and are all rooted themselves in inequalities. Or we have our religion and belief module, which looks at religion as a cause of social glue or social conflict. We ask deep questions around, does religion actually stifle gender equality? What about sexuality? Can you be LGBT and part of religion? And we start to ask, all those questions. Does it fundamentally cause inequality, or is it something that can potentially be used to heal it? So big questions around looking at the sociology of religion. And there's other routes you can kind of take through there. So like the study of the sociology of medicine. How much does medicine control our bodies and control the lives of men, women, sexual minorities? It's control very much over our mind and our body. And what does that look like? So there's kind of key routes you can take to become a specialist as you go through, which I just think make it so relevant to what's happening today. And if I may give an example of one of them, one of them under COVID lockdowns we've noticed has been the rise of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And we thought it was really important for people who study this route and the social policy and the research and practice route actually, was to look at domestic violence and criminal justice. So we have criminology modules in here that people can then take to understand, the kind of sociology of crime, basically, and apply it to domestic violence and, how effective has our criminal justice system been? Because we're seeing a rise in it right now. So I think it kind of cuts across. I think sometimes people think, well, in order to study crime, I need to study criminology. But in actual fact, sociology is behind criminology. It's a study of it. And so you can take these criminology options all the way through your degree as well, which we think just adds to the breadth and the beauty of the course.
Do you know what? I did BSC Sociology, but you've just sold it to me, Drew. I think if I was, honestly, if I was 18 years old again, taking a focus on gender in particular, I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Brilliant. No, well, if you ever need to restudy.
Well, yeah, exactly. If I take a career break, I'll come and join you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Drew. That's going to be the end of part one. In part two, we'll talk more about the other modules you can take.
Brilliant. Okay, that sounds great.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
Hi, welcome back to part two of the Sociology Show. I'm talking to Drew Dalton from the University of Sunderland. Drew, we talked about the classic BSc Sociology route and also the gender inequality route. If someone was contemplating research and social policy route, what would be the reasoning behind that? Why might someone take that route rather than the traditional BSc Sociology?
Well, for this one, this gets people to really look at kind of political ideologies and the nature of the welfare state and the role of policy in actively trying to tackle or not the social problems that we face in society. And so it gets people, there's still an inequality aspect to it because sometimes these policies that governments or bodies put into practice actually lead to deeper inequalities as well. So we look at things like social class and the welfare state and, how are people surviving or are they thriving right now? And so it may be looking at mechanisms of power and, how things like austerity has led to the rise in food banks, which we're seeing right now. And I think lockdown has also exacerbated that one, hasn't it?
Yes.
There's threats now to benefit cuts. So what does that mean in real terms going forward? And so we'd be asking people to kind of, for this one, having some access to the inequalities route modules as well, but also think more broadly about where do they fit in terms of how they've studied communities in first year, how they've understood inequalities and they've gotten an understanding of policy. What does this mean? So that we give up people opportunities in all routes to do placements here. So in your second year of a university and actually your third year, you can do a research placement. So you might at this point want to start looking at research in public and third sector organizations, charities or local authorities to go, how have people found the nature of, like, for example, austerity cuts? How has that affected single mothers? Or how has this affected migrants and refugees and asylum seekers? What does this mean in real terms? So we encourage people to go out and placement. And we were actually applauded for this by our external examiner who kind of looks over our degree from another university, who said it was really innovative that we actually put a placement in our second year where people do real world research. And we think, you can't not come through a sociology degree without doing real world empirical research. It just seems to make no sense. And so we offer those opportunities in both years. And so our policy people and our research and practice people, we very much encourage that going forward, really.
So that one would really benefit someone that's possibly contemplating a career in government or politics, somewhere in that area. Is that right?
Absolutely. Or even if you wanted to go into things like, international aid, or you wanted to work for the United Nations, or you wanted to do something on a global policy level. So we've got former students, for example, who we have a student who's working on heading up a European project on human trafficking of women. And, that policy stuff was vital to understanding, okay, what has human trafficking policy done? Has it actually been effective, or we're working together in trying to, help these women? So the policy stuff very often can be not just the traditional stuff we might think of. It can be things as kind of innovative as thinking about it in light of big global events like trafficking.
And then the fourth route you mentioned, research and practice, is that what it was called? Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit about that route?
Yeah, so we get a lot of students who come out of the degree and they very much have a focus on social exclusion and communities. And this is largely people who kind of want to look at the role of how research can make a difference to empower communities. So this is all about having at the very core of it service user voices. Really going into, say, for example, a domestic abuse project or a community development organization and saying, okay, have we really got the voices of the community speaking about how they want to see social change going forward? That really kind of empowerment-led stuff, that comes from South America originally, the Paulo Freire stuff, about engaging people in making social change happen. Because I think a lot of traditional research has been like, I'm the researcher, I go in and I do the research and I come out again. In actual fact, research is changing. And at the heart of it, there's all this beautiful empowerment philosophy that goes, you can come in and work with, not work, just trying to gain their voices. You can actually work with communities to make that change happen. And so this is about those people that want to see their communities and wider communities change. And so it offers very practical routes for you to go out there and do that. So the placement for these types of students would be, to getting them working with service user voices to make change happen.
Fantastic. Now, you've been an A-level teacher, Drew, so you'll know that the most common question that the students say is, what can I do with a sociology degree? And actually, it's quite a common question I get from parents as well. If their son or daughter's interested, what can they do with a sociology degree? So what's kind of your stock answer to that question, Drew?
Well, I've got a few on this one. So it's obviously all of our degree is deeply employment facing. And so I always like to make that kind of comment from the beginning. Even our assignments have an aspect of employability in them. So, traditional essays aside that everyone does at university, even our assignments are based around developing your skills. So, for example, in one of our modules, the assignment is about creating an electronic resource, i.e. a blog, a podcast, or YouTube videos, or write a report for the World Health Organization, if you take our global health module in third year. So, we've got that behind it as well. So some of it is about skill building. In terms of careers, people go into all sorts. So I talked earlier about the student that went into work in human trafficking with women across Europe. We have people that want to go into more international global institutions and humanitarian work. So this might be kind of international aid, international development and poverty, working for places like Oxfam, the big hitters. That's typically a route that some sociologists go into because they get to use their research, they get to use their service user voice kind of development, empowerment stuff. They understand the nature of inequality. We have other students who go into the criminal justice system. So now police officers, for example, have to have a degree. And so we have some students who go into the criminal justice system that might be as on the side of the criminal justice system, dare I say, either police or prisons or whatever, or on the other side, working with victims. So working with people who've been victims of hate crimes, or, you know, people who have been victims of crime generally, or documenting crime as a social researcher. So we have people that go into that. Other routes that are popular are into campaign work and working in campaigns. We have a number of our students, I've lost count over the years, who've went into teaching afterwards. Yeah. We've had a lot of people who've went into local authority. So we had one student who graduated 1 year, and she liked the inequality stuff and the policy work. And she ended up getting a job directly after a degree, actually. She worked with the local authority, monitoring hate crime and working to develop their equality and diversity section of the council, which was really cool. We've got people that go into kind of welfare services. So we have students who've left who work within housing support services, working within immigration. We've got people who work with minority groups. So, for example, LGBTQ work. I mean, the list is endless, isn't it? You know, it's all about, sociology is about the study of society.
Yeah.
And because you're coming out as a researcher, you're coming out as a person with the ultimate degree and getting you to understand why society is the way it is and why it changes and what the changes behind that are and the reasons for that. So people go into this work which is about tackling social problems and social issues. And I think that's a real big bonus about it. I think sometimes we tie ourselves in knots about saying, well, you know, I need to be a social worker because I need to study social work because I'll be a social worker. And that's well and good, but actually sometimes having a broader appeal can be just as powerful. And so we've had people, like I say, go into very varied careers because they've been able to specialize as they go through their degree. And we've then started to go, well, hang on. Well, if they're starting to specialize and they pick their modules because they're starting to develop a route they want to go into, like human rights or women's rights or whatever, then that's the joy of these specialist degrees that we've put together. So it's exciting times in sociology at Sunderland.
Yeah. Well, I also say to students as well, don't be too tied up in that sort of the future, because actually just do something that you enjoy, you know. Just don't do something for the sake of what's going to come at the end of it. Do something you enjoy, because what you want to do in the future can change and adapt over time anyway.
Oh, and it regularly does. We get students who say, I very definitely want to do this. This is the field I'm going into. So we had one student she came in, she wanted to be a detective.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm going to be a detective. That's exactly what I'm doing. And now she's in her third year. She's writing a dissertation on COVID and the effects and poverty and global health. And, you know, a total change around.
Yeah.
As to the route she wants to go into, and is now interested in possibly pursuing a career, you know, maybe with the World Health Organization or working within health inequalities. So it can totally change your way of thinking as you go through. And I think that's what sociology does, doesn't it? It opens up a world of opportunity for you.
Oh, yeah. It's hugely broad, certainly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Drew, if we've got students at the moment who are contemplating, flicking through prospectuses, trying to work out where to go up and down the country, perhaps they don't know a huge amount about Sunderland or the area. What would you say about if they were considering coming up to you? I'm saying up to you because I'm down in Brighton, so I'm assuming they're coming up to you.
I think for us, we've got some real kind of, I think you've got to get the basics right, first of all. And I think we've worked really hard on this. So, for example, some of our, going to the basics. So within our sociology degree, you're going to be in university for about 2.5 days per week. And we've purposely kind of lumped the timetable together so that, because we recognize that a lot of our students work. In fact, most of our students work. We're known as the friendly university, and we're very proud of that. And so, you know, we want to meet your needs outside of university, because some of our students are parents. Some, you know, work in jobs which are quite demanding. and they have households to run. Others don't, and they're in halls of residence, but they still need a job. So we've tried to get the basics right, and I think that's so important, because you see other university timetables where they're scattered across the week and people can't fit anything around it, you know? So I think getting the basics right is really key. Our semesters are 10-week semesters. We've shortened them, and with school term breaks for parents as well, which I think is really important.
Wow. Yeah.
So if we're practicing inclusion and talking about inclusion, we've got to be inclusive. So we have the school term breaks in there, and we use that opportunity. So if, let's say, for example, you weren't a parent and you were still in Sunderland for the week when it was half term, we make those into enrichment weeks. So it might be that, we do a trip to London, or we offer, taster talks on topics that you might be interested in coming along to, which is really nice. Sunderland itself is a really growing city. It's actually bigger than Newcastle in terms of population.
Yeah.
And it's been recently been at the forefront of huge amounts of regeneration work. So the old adage of it's grim up north and all the rest of it doesn't very much apply to this now. They're building huge concert venues. We've got a whole cultural centre. There's a riverside development going on, which looks absolutely stunning. They're building bridges and all sorts. It's really cool. And there's, for those who are sporty, there's tons of, sporting societies. For those who aren't sporty, I myself, and there's loads of other societies, from human rights to debating to feminist societies to whatever you want to be involved with in your university time. And that's really, really exciting stuff. So I think they're also good as well. I think the key thing is in here is well-being, though, isn't it? Because people become anxious when they travel to a new place and a new university. And so we've got a cracking welfare team with counselling and therapy services for people should they need them, all for free. So people can get that support when they're here, should they need it, or if they're feeling homesick. All those types of things that come with any form of change, really, isn't it? And so, it's just some of those things I think really help. On a bigger level, we offer, in addition to kind of the talk classes, we've got development sessions every week that run right throughout your degree. And basically what that means is in the first year, we build up your academic skills. You learn things like putting together infographics, designing presentations, all those things that you need. And actually you use in employment afterwards, particularly in a visual world that we live in. And then in their second year, we start getting people to think about managing change and about project management. So the stuff that very often you need to develop yourself personally.
Yeah.
And about working in organizations and understanding how organizations work. We get a lot of people who maybe haven't worked in a professional job by the time they graduate. So we wanted to build this in with people, so that they can understand that stuff, how to understand safeguarding, confidentiality and data protection, there's key things that you need. And then in your third year, we get you preparing to graduate. So in this kind of skills development, we're getting you to look at things like you may want to go on further to postgraduate study. If so, what does that look like? Where are the graduate jobs? We'll show you where they are. We'll get you writing your personal statements. You might want to set up as self-employed. So we have a whole section of the university that helps students to become their own business managers if you want to become a capitalist. And we just offer that kind of those sessions every week. And I think they're so important because they prepare you for that world out there, whether you know what you want to do or not. I think knowing where the sources are is better than just throwing you into the world of work and going, right, find a job. Will help to guide you. But one of the other big developments we've got, which we've always had, is our study abroad feature. So you can, in your second year, go for either one semester, either before Christmas or after Christmas. You can study sociology in another country anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And this will be a university which teaches in English, or if you're fluent in a foreign language, you can presumably study in a foreign language. But so we've had students go to, Los Angeles. We've had students go to Canada, to Amsterdam, to go all over, and they've studied sociology at another institution, which they've really enjoyed. And so there's an optional study abroad in your second year. You don't pay any extra for it. All of your costs are included within what you pay. So, that includes your accommodation when you're out there and all the rest of it. And it just builds up a wonderful opportunity, I think, to, get outside your comfort zone perhaps, and find out how another university works in another part of the world.
Yeah, I would have done that.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had. I really do. And it's just, some of our students can't do that. So what we've done in the past is we've run additional trips. So I've taken students to Kenya, and we went out there for 2 weeks. And this was to do some development work. So we used all of the research skills that students had learned about. We went out to Kenya for 2 weeks, and we taught community development organizations how to become better researchers. And it was so exciting because we went around schools, because we worked with a project that was about helping girls into education, particularly in rural Kenya. And we did a great project around that. It was so good. And then another year, I took students out to Nepal. And so we all went out to Nepal, and we studied a project on child labor. And we used our social research skills to go out there and study child labor practices and what was happening out there, and putting together literature reviews for the organizations that needed it. So, some really exciting kind of international stuff as well for those that can't do a study abroad, but can do 2 weeks, like a holiday.
Yeah. And if they can't study abroad, Sunderland's a good night out, isn't it? Cracking bar in Sunderland.
Really good night out. And there's some great places. We've also got Newcastle on the doorstep as well. So, and they're all connected by an underground service. So I should say overground really is the metro. And so you can kind of connect Newcastle, Gateshead and Sunderland all together. So you can, and that's the beauty of it. And we're right beside the beach. This is a bit we probably don't shout out enough. Sunderland looks out onto an award-winning beach. Yeah. So if you like beach walks, if you want to walk up to the lighthouse, there's all that good stuff. There's some lovely bars along the beach side on Roker beachfront. And really cool places, and it's great fun. Yeah,
it's amazing coastline there, isn't there?
It is. Really is stunning.
And it might be worth, if students are contemplating, if they do live in the south or in London, then the cost of living is going to be a bit cheaper up in your part of the world as well.
A lot more. I know a couple of years ago, I think our student accommodation was voted the cheapest in the UK.
Yeah.
And which is great. And also, I think those who worry about, fitting in, what does university look like? Because I was the first in my family to go to university. I'd never, nobody else had been, and we see this with some of our students. It's quite common. I think what's really important to know in this is that we very proudly got named the University of the Year for social inclusion this year. Wow. And that's really exciting to us. That means we're doing something right. We're making students welcome from working class backgrounds. We're making students welcome from all backgrounds. That equality, diversity, inclusion stuff is so important, and we're so proud to get that, because it's like, as sociologists, we're like, what we're doing is working well.
That's brilliant. Hey. Thank you, Drew. Any last advice for anyone contemplating, particularly coming to yourselves at the University of Sunderland?
I think the key thing is if you want to study sociology, these are people who want to change the world. And I think you can do that, and we can give you the skills in which to do that. And keep thinking in your mind, you're coming out with not just a sociology degree, you're coming out as a social researcher, and you're going to be part of social change. And I can't think of a more exciting time to study sociology than now. And my last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, is a very recent survey looked at the top 10 jobs of the future. Sociologists were in that top 10.
Yes.
We need them now more than ever. We're going through a period of rapid social change with COVID, and we need people to hold us to account, to be able to research what those changes are and how they affect people in the UK and further, this is a good time to be a sociologist. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Well, I've long argued that it should be on the curriculum at schools as well, but I've probably said enough about that.
I agree with you.
And so just to finish off, Drew, then, so if students are interested, come to University of Sunderland, I assume they can just Google it, have a look at your courses online?
Yes, you can. Please check us out at the university itself, which is www.sunderland.ac.uk, and search for sociology, and we're there.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today, Drew. You've certainly sold me. I want to come and do a sociology degree and go to LA.
Hey, excellent.
Thanks a lot, Drew.
Cheers. Thank you.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.